Very warm welcome to another session of Be Equipped. Today we're going to be speaking on the topic of eldership and eldership teams, and even diving into a bit of the nitty-gritty of when eldership teams are not gelling very well. And I have got Ryan Kingsley with me here. On this particular topic, I have huge amounts of respect for you. For those of you that don't know, I was actually on Ryan's eldership team myself for how many years was it, Ryan?
Yes, at least 8 or 9. Yeah. It was great. Yeah.
And Ryan has subsequently moved on to lead another church in Benoni. And so on this particular topic of leading teams and developing healthy eldership teams, I personally can't think of someone else I'd rather be interviewing.
Hey,
and so
great.
Really excited to do this with you. So maybe to just dive into the topic, Ryan. I think for many people, when they think of an eldership team, the idea of having a unified, harmonious, peaceful, Jesus-loving, full of vision, full of momentum picture is really hard to imagine, because you've got a bunch of people who are leaders, essentially.
Yeah.
Usually quite strong personalities, strong ideas about things. They're leadership type people. So I guess the first question is it really possible to have a team of elders that are united, that are harmonious in that sense?
Yeah, very good. I think over the years, I've encountered a lot of guys that do lead, that they've got incredible harmonious relationships, and with deacons often, with other leaders. But yeah, you're right. On their own eldership team, it's almost like this thing of, is this going to be possible? Like, so often I'm leading, but I feel like I'm almost working against and fighting things through constantly. And so some guys, they just almost stay aloof from that team. It's almost like, okay, we have it there because we need to, but I'm almost going to lead outside of that, and only when I need to essentially bring something, then I'll pull in there. So, but definitely, man, this is what Jesus prayed for. When he prayed, when he was about to leave this planet, he said, Father, make them one as we are one,
So he was praying for his own leadership team.
And he was praying for his disciples there. I mean, he had seen their personalities. He had lived with them for 3 years. So you realize that's probably why, with the kind of guys they were.
He knew there was potential for some
serious potential, So Father, protect them, protect them and protect the unity and actually make them one. He uses the word one, which I love using, because unity is a word that gets thrown around in Christian circles, that everyone talks about unity, and often it's very shallow, but he uses this word one. It's almost like, and he says the oneness of the Trinity is the same kind of thing that we should be going for, So it's really not optional at all. It's something that, like, Jesus prayed for. For him, it is such a big deal that how could it not be a really big deal for us? And possibly, and it's an absolutely essential ingredient if you want a healthy church.
Yeah. So like for a lead elder that maybe has found himself in the situation you described, where he's finding leading the congregation something that's doable, but even on his own team, he's kind of maybe even given up on some of the battles of having true unity and true harmony. What would you say to someone like that? Why is this a battle that, to use a battle worth winning? Why is it a battle worth winning?
No, wonderful. Well, partly just because it's horrible to live like that and just accept that as a norm. Who wants to be part of a team like that? That's just, one thing. Obviously, when you're leading the church, you should be asking, like, what's a big deal to Jesus? What's going to cause the favor of God to come on our church? Because I can put all sorts of strategies and plans into place, but ultimately, what Jesus thinks, whether he wants to be there or not, and whether he's going to get behind it and favor our church and bring his power and his grace. What matters there is, well, what's important to you, Jesus? And so from that point of view, just the presence of God, it's absolutely essential. Obviously, there's also this principle that we often talk about, that whatever you see within your leadership team is ultimately what you're going to see in your church. So if you're trusting God for a church that's unified, that when we say we're going to take that hill, we take that hill. When we take new areas for the gospel, The prelude to that, the precursor to that, is the sense of, well, we have to have a team that is unified, because that's going to flow into everyone else. That's the example that will be followed ultimately.
What does a healthy eldership team look like then? Like, paint a picture for us.
So this is beautiful. I think, and honestly, this is something that as leaders, as lead elders, as elders, I think we need to come to this question and go, like, God, we really want to be a team that reflects the unity within the Trinity. We want to reflect the nature of Christ. We want to reflect the servant-heartedness, and so there's obviously the nature of Jesus needs to be reflected in our team. But when you dive into the scripturally, some of the words that have stood out over the years has been one in heart, one in mind, one in purpose. You look at Philippians 2 and John 20 and Acts 5, that describe the church. You look at Jesus going, in order to reach the nations, ultimately, I want a bunch of disciples that love one another. That's what's going to define you. That's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to show people who you are, that you belong to a different kingdom and a different name. So it's this idea of there is a oneness in heart. We desire the same thing. We desire what Jesus desires. And ultimately, that unity is built around the person of Jesus. I think to think that we can just create unity by becoming good buddies and friends, that's not real unity. Real unity comes around the person of Christ. It's about us as elders getting around the throne room of God, looking to Him, worshiping Him, and being in His presence. And it's out of that the true unity starts flowing. One in mind. You just think of a team that obviously there's different opinions. Like you said, as leaders, we come with strong theology sometimes, strong backgrounds in different theologies. But we need to come around the Word of God. We honor the Word of God as obviously the ultimate authority in all areas, and we're willing to actually put aside some of our own pet doctrines, some of the causes that we often might have fought for in the past. We hold those things lightly, and we come and we say what's more important is that as a team, we believe the same on the essentials, but we're willing to flow when it comes to some of the gray areas, and I hold those things lightly because what's more important is the unity here. When it comes to purpose, it's that sense of, well, I want to be one in purpose. I don't have my private agendas. At the end of the day, what the team decides and what the team goes for is more important than my recognition, my gift, the things that I feel strongly about, So it's really that sense of a bunch of guys that have come together and they've taken the posture of Christ before the Father that says, it's not about my will, it's about your will. It's not about my own interests. It's about the interests of others, like Philippians 2. It's taking that posture of humility, and that team is such a pleasure to lead. You just realize why Jesus probably spent so much time speaking into his team about being servants, about being those that are willing to wash one another's feet. So I think that's probably at the heart of a lot of what you see in an ideal, healthy team,
You're touching now on the issue of how we posture our hearts in a team. And like you mentioned, it's interesting how often Jesus spoke on that, even in the context of leadership. His leadership training often took the form of how we posture our hearts towards others, but also towards each other. So I suppose now we're getting to the nitty-gritty of an eldership team. And for anyone that's been on an eldership team that's more than just one person, it's very simple if you're just one person. But if you now believe in a plurality of leadership, which we do, so now you've got elders who are all elders, in that sense equal, but then you also have a leader of that eldership team who is also an elder. So it's leadership of the team, but also plurality in the team. And so then what is the role then of the lead elder on a team of elders? How does that dynamic work?
Yeah, very good. I think, firstly, I think it is really important to recognize that there is this position of you do need someone to make a final call. They're not better than, they are still elders, they're part of the team, they're not above the team, but they're running ahead and they're making final calls, and even Acts 15 is a great example of this, where there's this doctrine that's brought out, which really could decide the future of theology and understanding on certain key issues in the New Testament. And they come together and all the elders are there, the church is even there. But at the end of the day, someone has to stand up and say, this now is our decision. And the team has to then represent that decision and say, okay, together we're going to go into all the churches with the same message from now on. And so it's absolutely an essential concept. I think being a lead elder, one of the things that I know has been taught to me over the years, and I just think this is so important and it's something that we miss, is the fact that my job as a lead elder, it's not to just hear all the best opinions and the best thoughts and then say, okay, well, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's strategize a way forward, like it's all about wisdom and strategy. No, it's actually all about, at the end of the day, we do have a chief shepherd that's above the lead elder, that's leading the lead elder and the team. And at the end of the day, it's going, Jesus, I really want to hear your voice on any given situation. So I think, the lead elder's role is to be that final say. But in being that final say, it's to be going, I'm seeking the will of Jesus. I mean, it should go without saying. It's weird to even have to say that. But I think so often we just get carried away, especially in a Western culture, carried away with our ideas and, oh, well, that sounded like a good idea. Thanks. We'll go with Fred's idea.
Like an idea sort of workshop.
It's like a workshop. Yeah. And a brainstorming session. And it's like, no, this is not the idea here. The idea is to hear the voice of God and then to go with that, and to lead then with confidence from that place. Like, what Luke said was, I believe what Jesus wants to do in this situation, and we're going for that, because I recognize, even as a lead elder, what counts is his opinion, Jesus's opinion and his idea above anything else. I think a huge part of being a lead elder is guarding the unity. That gift of leadership that governs diligently, the Bible says, is a gift that needs to be able to pull other giftings together and help them to work together. Other giftings that are often very different. You might have some people that are very purpose-driven, and some people that are just very people-focused, and some people that are very doctrine-focused, and you're going to have all sorts. You have to have all sorts on a healthy eldership team. It's good to have all sorts, to find the mind and the heart of God. But a big part of that is going to be then for the lead elder to go, okay, when it comes to conflict between people, when it comes to people struggling in their hearts because of the directional call that we've made, or that kind of thing, I'm going to step towards that. I'm not just going to let any fires just simmer unchecked, or any kind of bitterness just grow. And it happens in teams. It really does, And so you got to step towards those things and say, how are we going to resolve this? How are we going to bring unity? You're fighting for hearts. You're guarding the unity of the saints all the time. I just think of Paul speaking in Acts 20 to the Ephesian elders. And what does he say? He says, watch yourselves and the flock. It's firstly watch yourselves, because within this team, he could see as well, just like Jesus did, he could see that there's huge potential for wolves to even arise, for divisions to come, and ultimately it's believing. One thing, I mean, even just to throw in here, man, this is just a great picture for me, is the picture of parents in a family. It's this picture of, at the end of the day, what's one of the best things that I could ever give to my children in a family? And what I've realized is the best thing I can give them is the picture of parents that are unified, that submit to one another, that listen, that work through conflict. A healthy marriage is the best thing that I can actually give to my family. Everything flows from that. My kids are going to grow up secure with, a whole lot of maturity in areas that people just don't have maturity nowadays. When I go on date nights with my wife, what I often tell my kids is, yes, we're going on another date. And they're like, oh, are you going again on a date? Yes, we are, but it's for your sake we're going on a date, because the best thing I can give you is us being unified, being one in heart, one in mind, and one in purpose. Everything's going to flow from there and just brings life and health to the family, So I think a lead elder is really going, the whole time is going, we got to keep this team together, keep it unified, keep it pulling in the same direction, and hearing Jesus' voice.
It's a great line for the date night, by the way. I might be using that for my own child.
Oh, yeah.
It's not for my sake, it's for your sake. It's wonderful. So I think, like, obviously, when it comes down to the rub now, if you're not a lead elder, and I'm just putting myself in the shoes of, it's not that hard for me to do because it wasn't that long ago as well.
Yes.
But if you are on an eldership team and you're doing the best to posture your heart towards the guy that's leading the team, i.e. yourself, or in my case right now, Andrew, and you feel really strongly about something, but the lead guy doesn't quite see it the same way. What's the best way of bringing that strong conviction that you have in a healthy way?
Yeah. So let me first deal with it from a heart posture before we even talk about just how we do it. Once again, our heart posture has to be that posture of humility on a team. That real belief that I have one perspective to bring. I only see things from one angle, and that's what I can bring to the team. And whatever I bring, I'm holding with a sense of, you know, I could be wrong on this, someone else could see it better. And so that's a deep belief we have to have. Because often, to be honest, often as leaders, I think there can be that sense of I want to push myself forward. I want to be heard. I want to be seen. I want to be significant. I want to have a part to play. And so we've got to deal radically with our hearts when it comes to that, because there's a lot at stake when you're now in leadership.
Even that I'm representing Christ and you guys can't see it. I mean, to take it one step further, I mean, that sometimes can be the case, that you really feel like everyone else is not actually seeing the mind of Christ on this. And it just so happens that I'm the only one on the team.
Yeah, totally.
That's easy.
So recognizing your position on the team is so important. Like we said, you know, there is a leader. There is someone that makes that final call. If that person is making the wrong call, if they are leading into sin, then yes, obviously we've got recourse towards the apostolic, to those that are within our field overseeing and looking after. And so a healthy, safe family, when it comes to eldership teams, we have to see the role of the apostolic in that as well. You can't, I don't know if you can have a healthy eldership team, to be honest, without having relationship with the apostolic. I believe that's absolutely biblical. Every letter is written to correct, you know, local teams. But just from a practical point of view here, in terms of not just my heart posture, but how do I actually do this? I mean, one of the lines that we would often talk about as a team was this line of, don't insist on your opinion, but submit your perspective. And it's so different. It's this thing of, I've got something, the world has told me, I've got something to give. I've got an opinion. I've got a right to speak. I want to be heard, just like those 5 guys were heard, you know. And if we're bringing something from that perspective, going, I'm going to try and convince, I'm going to try and, you know, then
win the argument.
Well, I'm going to win the argument, man. You're actually defeated already. You're going to miss the mind of Christ, definitely, because you're coming with the opposite nature to Christ. But what I rather do is I submit my perspective. So submission is not, I'm coming, it's, I'm coming. Here it is. And now I leave it. And it's actually not my final call to make. I've done what I need to do under God, you know. So the other thing on this is obviously, when it comes to this principle of leadership, it's never actually about being the ultimate person in authority. You know, we're always actually in authority, but also under authority. And in fact, what gives me authority is to be under authority. What makes it safe is that there is this flow, you know, this delegated authority starting with Jesus, you know, flowing all the way into the church, you know. And so one of the most helpful things someone told me once, and I've tried to live my life on this principle, you know, being part of teams, but also leading teams, is they just simply said to me, when I had the wrong posture, to be honest, I had the wrong posture. I was trying to fight for my opinion. And they said, remember that whatever you sow, you are going to reap. However you follow is how you are one day going to be followed. That principle, you can't get away from it. You know, God will not be mocked. This is what will happen, the Bible says, you know. And so I think even having that in mind, as I've had to sometimes follow in times where it's a bit difficult, I don't fully agree, what I've said is just, you know what? I want to sow something into the ground here that one day I'm going to reap. When I lead one day, man, I would love to have a team that is just, you know, following well, frothing, excited, going where we go, one in heart, one in mind, one in purpose, you know. So how can I sow that? How can I be that now so that one day I'll see that happening, you know, and we'll be part of that team one day.
And almost inevitably what my experience has been on eldership teams is that there's one person that feels like they need to represent the other view.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they would call it the devil's advocate because we're all Christians and no one wants to be the devil's advocate, but it's kind of like that kind of a role. What would you give, what kind of advice would you give to somebody like that?
I mean, the scary thing is I have heard people use those exact words of like, and it comes from the world, and it's obviously, and they've said like, I've got to be the devil's advocate here to keep things healthy, to bring the other side, and I mean, my first thing I would just say is like, the devil doesn't need your help. He's good at your job, he doesn't need an advocate. He's great at what he does, but I mean, look, jokes aside, obviously part of an eldership team is that there are people that sometimes see holes or see things that someone else doesn't see, so that definitely happens. And then obviously I need to submit my perspective. I think first of all, don't see yourself as that, see yourself as, I'm here to blow wind into what I need to blow wind in first. I'm here to get behind the team's decision first. I'm here to represent the team well, first of all. I'm putting my heart in that place. And over the years, I think we've all had to do that on team. We've all had to look at things and go, that's not the call I would have made. I don't even know if I agree with that, but it's not sin. And so I'm going to get behind this thing because ultimately I want His favor. I want Jesus's favor over my life and over this team more than I want my side to be taken, So I think that's really important. If I do see a legitimate hole or gap or something wrong, then there's a way to bring that, But when I bring it, don't think that what I have is more important than maybe the 50 other things you're dealing with in church. Sometimes I've had to help guys with that and say, like, listen, it's really good what you're bringing. This is not the only thing that's happening right now. The bigger a building gets, the more there might be a brick in the wrong place, but that's not the biggest thing right now. There's other foundations maybe we're dealing with right now that are even more important. So weight it correctly. See how big it is. Is it a 10 out of 10 crisis or is it a 2 out of 10? If it's a 2 out of 10, try and weight it correctly, And I think on this as well, it's just really good to know your own default. Know your defaults. This is something we would do as eldership teams, is what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are some of your default settings, and to go, well, my default setting is mercy. I see everything through the eyes of mercy. I just want to help. I just want to pour out love and mercy on every situation. If there's a sin issue, my first thing is just how do we get in there and show the mercy of Jesus, and rather than maybe what's needed is the discipline of Christ in that situation, So if I know my default, I can also bring my perspective and say, well, as I bring this, I know that I always see things through a mercy grid. But if I hear someone speak like that as a lead elder, man, it helps so much. I can just take what they're saying and go, thank you. I'm glad you recognize your default. Now I can really hear what you're saying. Now I can really actually see, okay, is this actually Jesus or not? I don't feel like I need to fight you or I need to try and correct you or say, hey, that's not the only angle. It's just so much easier to receive. I mean, it's a funny thing. The more you come with this posture of humility and submission, actually the more people do receive what you say, so...
Cool, that's really helpful, Ryan. I think maybe my last question for you, and something to leave our audience with, is just for somebody that's maybe a new lead elder, or somebody that's possibly come into a church now and is trying to transition a church, or, I mean, pretty much the exact situation you were in, where you're coming into an eldership team, you're leading the church, but you're new. What advice would you give to a lead elder in a situation like that?
Yeah, that's... Look, the first thing I really want to say, and this is really also to lead elders out there that haven't given themselves and joined with something, a field, a partnership beyond themselves, like for 12, is do everything with perspective and help from the apostolic, from those who have been gifted to build like expert builders, to help you to see, is this just your own perspective or not? Because often when you come into those kind of situations, you might not even have an eldership team, or it's definitely a team you might not be used to, and they might not be used to you. So having that external perspective is absolutely, absolutely key, really on all major decisions. I think the other thing is this thing of, and I'll get into a more practical thing now, but this thing of really honoring Christ and going, I want to hear what Jesus says. Once again, I know it feels like we shouldn't even have to say that, but ultimately when you lean into Jesus is building his church, and what is he building right now? You're leaning into something that already has the grace of God in it and on it. And so I'm hearing Christ. And as an eldership team, when we're getting together, transitioning a church, coming into a new eldership team, what we're doing a lot of the time is we're pointing the attention to Jesus. We're worshiping Jesus. We're praying and spending time with him as a team. We're making sure that our unity flows from the person of Christ in our midst, and hearing his voice. What this means practically is, and I mean, this is really a huge piece of advice, is just don't make lots of changes at once. Make your changes, see what really needs to be changed and take a long time to change it. For people like myself,
not the 2 out of 10.
Exactly. For people like myself, that's hard. For most leaders, that's hard, because as soon as you see things, you want to dive in, you want to do it. There's so many of us have those personalities, and it's a strength, but it can also be a weakness, because you're not taking people with you properly. And so as a leader, when I recognize there's something I want to transition, I've got to have the patience to go one thing at a time, and I've got to have the patience to go every kind of team within the church, every level of leadership. I need to touch all of those, and I need to bring them onto that page before I move forward. So even from an eldership point of view, I'm not just going to come into an elders meeting with 10 other elders that don't even know me that well and say, from now on, Jesus has said this, let's do it. I'm going to make sure I get to some of those guys first. I talk to them. I get perspective. I hear where the church has been. I honor them in the process. I'm still going to bring the change, but I'm doing it from a place of, we're winning hearts on this together. We're doing this thing together. Obviously, it takes courage. You do have to be courageous. You do have to hear the Lord, and you do have to move on and actually get it done and make those changes to make the church more healthy, But do it slowly. Do it with a lot of perspective from those who have been there and done that.